the grittier Australian version of magic realism. Welcome, Mere Mortalites, to another round of the Mere Mortal Book Reviews. You have your favourite host here, Kyron, also host of the Mere Mortals and Value for Value podcast. But this is the book reviews channel where we dive deeper into the books that I've been reading to get the juicy information, extract some themes, perhaps go over some stuff you might not have thought about, and also just relish in our love of books, which is what we do over here. Typically, I focus on books that are older than 5 to 10 years, something that stood the test of time and that is worthy of being talked about. So you'll find all genres in here. We've gone back to the ancient Stoics and Romans and Greeks, Plato, Socrates, people like that. We've got modern sci-fi, Dune, things like this, and then also even just romance or a little bit of everything, to be honest. And as today, I do have a fun book for you. I do have Tim Winton's Cloudstreet. So this is an Aussie classic, as I mentioned, published in 1991. It's about 470 pages in length. It's pretty thick. And it took me, I'd say, about 10 hours of reading, maybe even a bit more than that to get through in total. So let's talk about this book. Why did I pick it? What was my motivation and even initial impression of it? Well, if you go back into the book review channel history, you'll see about 2.5 years ago, I did a Aussie book month. And this is when I was reading 2 books a week, I believe. So there was quite a few. I think I did 8 Aussie books, not necessarily classics, but some of them certainly were, like My Brother Jack and Richard Flanagan's Gold's Book of Fish. And plenty of Miles Franklin, all sorts of different people in there. And so I did still have a list on my phone of other Aussie classics that I just had never really gotten to. And it's always been sitting there. And I was just going like, you know what, I should read more Australian books. I should get more into my own culture and history. So that was my initial reasoning for picking this. And this is pretty high up there in terms of one of the Aussie classics. If you just type in Aussie classics, this will come up there. And we'll talk about why it's a classic coming up soon. But it's pretty full on from the very start of this book. As you start reading, I would say within the first 10%, you have a maiming. So one guy loses most of his hand, brain damage to a small child, and a death. And this is all like super, super quick. And so you do kind of get like hit with, I suppose, one of the things that you'll find from this book, which is a lot about hardship and I suppose like Aussie life back in the 1940s to 60s, which was when this was really created. And then all these people that are contained within the book move into a street called Cloudstreet, which is where they initially grew up and where most of the book takes place. So let's get on to the plot / style of what we're talking about. So in particular, there's 2 families that are reunited in this one house, this being the Lambs and the Pickles. And so both are pretty large families centering on 2 parents on each side. And then they have roughly like 3 to 5 kids, each of them. And they both move into these. They're both pretty poor in the sense of not much material wealth, and they're almost diametrically opposed into how they actually live and how they are. So in terms of the setting, this was mostly everyday life in Perth, from Perth being Western Australia. And this was going from roughly the World War II period to the 1960s, from what I can tell. There's no exact dates put on it. And you really do have these 2 different families. There's the Lambs, who have Oriel and Lester, and they're these kind of like God-fearing, industrious, hardworking people who move into the house, and they're the tenants. And then we have the Pickles, which are, I would say, like this lazy, blithe, hedonistic type of family who are kind of gifted this house through the death of an uncle, I believe, or something like that, which they can't sell. And then this being Sam and Dolly, and then they've got a whole series of kids. The book mostly focuses on a couple of the kids each, not all of them. They don't all get equal airtime in the book, I should say. And so we just follow their relationships, how they interact with each other in the world, and I suppose the eventual melding together of these 2 families with elements of kinship and family and drama and what's going on in their lives and things like this. It's a real mix of a book in terms of the style, because it has a lot of short and sharp chapters. You'll have these ones which are less than a page long, going up to maybe 6 or 7 pages, but they usually are pretty short and sharp, and this allows the author to go from individual characters to individual characters pretty rapidly, because like I said, there's probably about 9 to 10 characters who are very influential and receive a lot of airtime and talking about it in this book, and it really focuses on their point of view. So when it switches to another character, it's like this is what they're experiencing, even if it is a shared moment with other members of the family. So yeah, it's separated into 10 parts in particular, which allows for some time skips as well, because we're covering 20 years here. So there'll be skips of, like 5 years where it'll just go instantly and go on. There's a lot of dialogue, descriptions, setup, ethereal musings. There's all sorts of things going on to here. I'll pick this section from page 201, which is just talking about hell. And so it's kind of an interesting mix thrown into it. So hell is like this. It's this cowering in the bottom of the cellar far from the smouldering trapdoor, between pumpkins and tubs of apples. It's the smell of carry forest rising into the sky, and the bodies of roos and possums returning to the earth as carbon, and the cooking smell falling through the dimness like this. Trees go off like bombs out in the light, and the cauldron boils and spits all about. Hell is being 6 years old and wondering why you're alone in the dark, and no one else has come down yet. It's the sound of your own breathing, the salty stink of your bloomers, the way the walls have warmed, the flickering cracks, the screams like 1,000 nails being drawn, the hammering, throttling noises, the way the rats are panicking and throwing themselves against things. It keeps going on like that. So you can kind of get, okay, it's almost got like these flowery, ethereal moments. And then there's other sections which are much more, this is what this person is doing. I suppose the main thing to call out is it's got this elements of magic realism, which it's not the main focus of the book, much like it has been in previous books I've covered, like Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He's really well renowned for this, where it's a fictional world usually, but then it's got these elements of completely magical, unbelievable things happening, but the characters kind of just go along with it. It's not like, oh my god, what's happening? It's like, oh, that's a bit weird, that's a bit strange, but they don't immediately jump to conclusions of aliens or drugs or or ethereal beings or anything like that. They kind of just take it as it comes. So we see this with things like there's a talking pig, there's Quick, who has the shining light coming out of his body, this huge prawn catch which is out of season, there's ghosts, there's dancing newspaper articles on the wall that come alive. There are these elements which are really fantastical, but what I suppose sets this book apart from other books I've read on magic realism or have this style within them is that it's more realistic. So it's kind of like a lucky streak of gambling in desperate straits, Fisher's survival from near death. This is where he gets brain damage from an almost drowning. The shifty shadow, the pig saving Oriole from death at one moment. There are all these kind of miracles, very lucky things happening, but they're almost more believable. It's kind of this weird mix between the magic realism and it's still a miracle, but it's almost a grittier version of it. So we do have quite a few elements happening on the house on Cloudstreet. So let's go into some of the questions, themes that are arisen from this book, and what you really see is hardship from the get-go. Everyone is just getting screwed over. As I mentioned, that was really what's happening to Sam, who loses most of his hand and just has a stump apart from, I think, his thumb, or just one finger survives. There's what I guess this book allows is you get to see everyone's private hell, because you can't just say this one person has it really rough. Sam, he's the one who got maimed, but he's got his own problems, but his daughter has her own problems. Rose's non-childhood and anorexia. Sam, not only with his hand, but just shitty luck in general. He really doesn't catch a break. There's Quick, who is the brother of Fish, the boy who drowns and has brain damage. And he has guilt, survivor's guilt over, like, it could have been me who got trapped under the net and had this, and it should have been me. Oriole, who has loss after loss in terms of family members, in terms of people that she loves in her life. It is a rather brutal a brutal book, and you get to see everyone's individual loss. What comes out of this is, I think, that each must draw on their own strengths to get over this. So you see with Rose, for example, dealing with her anorexia and just this kind of non-childhood. She draws on her like own internal strength. Oriel is very much the same, where she's got this kind of hardened nails. As Sam, he kind of gets over this shitty luck by believing in the shifty shadow and just saying, like, accepting his fate in some ways. Quick, who has to just kind of just deal with this lingering feeling of like it should have been me, and go on his own path out into the desert, leave the family and kind of be away from them a while to realize and come back eventually, like, okay, it wasn't, it's just one of those things that happen. So we see they all have their own hardships, and how they deal with it is very different. I'm going to jump to page 279 here, where we get a taste of how Oriel overcomes her, I suppose, hardship and what she's been feeling. So the early morning quiet time, as she calls it, has proven impossible to shake off, but it gives her time to meet the Dale, steel herself, put on the full armor, as she used to say. She finishes up, tidies the table again, and feels the mulberry tree hanging over the tent like a cloud. It's still early. She'll give them another half hour before reveille. It's been a hard week since the wedding, what with Quick turning up and keeping them on the lookout like that, and the hole that Hat has left in the company. Another loss. Oh, if she thinks about everything that's been taken from her over the years, Lord, it's like the longest subtraction sum invented. She can't help it. The feeling is on her and she's furious. It's a sickness, self-pity. It'll eat you up, woman. You know it. It'll eat the day and worm into your labor and weaken you. She puts her square, red fist on the table, watches it like a paperweight. Up the back, the pig snorts like a priest chanting. Fowls begin to scuffle. She hears water in the sewerage pipes beneath the garden path. Someone is up. So we see with her, it's this very much self-determination strictness. This is how she gets over the loss of loved ones, of, a daughter not abandoning the family, but getting married and moving on, of people showing up and causing drama and chaos like Quick did on the wedding day. And so it's very much just this, she has this internal beating, this strictness, and this is how she gets over her hardship. And this is nice and all. Each of the characters kind of deal with it as best as they can. But this is where it gets into, I suppose, the other theme I really gained from this book, which is about kinship, which is almost the final backstop, because they all have their ways of dealing with hardship, with adversity, obstacles in life, but they're kind of imperfect. It's a way of just getting by, of living for an extra year, or not going crazy and insane and just giving everything up. But you can do that for maybe a year, maybe a couple of years, but in the end, they all seem to break down at some point. And this is where kinship, family, is so important in this book. So every time someone gets close to the edge, it's almost like the family that saves them. Jumping again on here to page 297, this is where we have, I believe it's Quick talking with his mum. And so she's just asking him like questions about what it's been like, what's it, it's the first real chat they're almost having together. Oriel pulled the net and tried not to show exhilaration at having him here like this, at the two of them talking like adults together. There was something hard and resistant in him now, something he'd grown in being gone, and she knew it had been worth the hurt. Why are you so bitter? Because of your family or because of yourself? What do you mean? Do you hate the fact that you come from, well, let's just say, crack troops, weirdos, mum, flamin' wackos? Or is it just the old business of feeling guilty about being a survivor? Quick almost stumbled at that. It went deep into him. What the hell would you know? You don't know the first thing about feelings, certainly not mine, and damn not sure about what I feel about fish. I know about being a survivor. You think it's your fault he died. You think it should have been you. You're paralyzed with this thing that's eaten you, and you don't know that it's rubbish. You don't know a damn thing about it, Mum. She thought about her mother and sisters up in the cooking like picnic steaks. She thought about her mother and sisters up in the house, cooking like picnic steaks while she lay helpless in the cellar. She saw the bullet-torn wallet of Bluey, her half-brother with its black crust of ink and blood, and the king stamp signature on the slip of paper, and she could feel Fish's chest under her fist as she beat life into him, with the sky kiting over her, silent as death. she pursed her mouth and with her teeth set behind them. So it's very much this aspect where, he's gone away, he's developed some steel, he's become a man almost in some sorts, but he still has this lingering thing about Quick, of being a survivor, of the guilt over that. And it's where you need the family, and this is probably the most important thing about the family. It's not necessarily just being there, which sometimes is helpful, just having someone is in your back, and even if they can't communicate with you that well, you still know that you have someone in your corner that'll love you. This is very much, I think, at least in my life, what my mum has always been for me. There's never been a real deep conversations with her, but she's always been there for me. When we look at other people in this book, and Oriole, for example, it's almost reversed. For her, she's the one who needs to have the tough talk with Fish and with Quick about Fish, and make him realize, like, hey, it's not your fault. It's okay. And he's just holding on to it, where his dad is much more the joker, the jester, and he's the one who's always providing that family atmosphere of loving, of baking pastries and things like this. And so it's almost like this, you need to have family to almost have those uncomfortable conversations sometimes, those things that'll make you realize that you're holding something back, or you're not doing this thing out of fear, or you're blaming yourself for something that happened a long time ago. It's almost the process of having hard talks, and which I think is what a lot of this book is about. The uncomfortable moments of realizing, this person that you thought. Another aspect that comes up even just in that sentence I read there was, he didn't know really that much about his mum. He didn't know, like, she's been through shit. He feels guilty about his brother surviving whilst he semi-surviving in this kind of brain damaged state while he survived and lived. She was there while her siblings were burning in a forest fire out in the bush. She was there when her brother went overseas to fight in the war and got killed. She was there trying to save Fish as he had drowned and come back to life. So it's also that aspect of, kinship is about realizing that your parents and other family members, they have their own internal hardships as well. It's not all about me. It's just there are other aspects to life, and it can be very hard to realize that, and then also very gratifying at times to know, like, oh my God, my mum, who seems like a bitch, in the case of Dolly and Rose, she realizes, like, oh, her mum had troubles as well. It's not, the reason she's a drunken alcoholic is not because her life was going swimmingly and she just chose to abuse her own child and to basically neglect her. It's like, no, she's trying to overcome things that she herself has dealt with. Not excusing abuse or alcoholism, but it's that compassion, that empathy of understanding, like, oh, this is another person. My parent is a human being who's gone through their own things as well. So quite a few stuff there. Let's jump into the author and some extra details. Honestly, there's not too much to talk about Tim Winton. I was just doing a bit of research, and he seems to rather stay away from the limelight. He doesn't particularly like to... He likes the focus being on the books, not on him. So we'll respect that and just leave him to it. But just saying, he is a prolific Australian author, and worthy of reading some of his books for sure. The extra details in this book it really gets into, like magic realism, the grounding in the everyday life is what makes those fantastical elements so intriguing, so interesting, of the kind of ghosts or the shining lights from people. And I think he does a real good job of that in this book, because even if there are some ridiculous things that happen in it, you do get a lot of Australian culture and history. You do get big moments that happen in time, things that I'd never heard about, like the Nedlands monster, for example, which plays an important role in probably the final quarter of the book, final fifth of the book, which was a serial killer in the, I'm going to say, like 1950s, maybe early 1960s in Perth, and was an actual guy. And so there are these incorporations of it. It gives like a richness and a grounding to those extra additional elements. And boy, in this book is there slang galore. You will have to get used to a lot of it. There's no glossary at the end, so if you're having a shot at this and you are not Australian, I'm just going to say good luck. You probably will want to search up some of these terms, because there's things like tropo, g'day, fair dinkum, chunder, which is to spew, grog, alcohol, khan, which is kind of a way of shortening come on, cobber, which is related to police, grousest. There's just a lot of different things going on in here, so get prepared for that. It's usually only in the dialogue between actual characters, so you'll still get the setup, so it's not super important. It's not like the narrator himself is coming up with all of these extra things, so that's not too bad, but I'll give you a little taste of it here on the bottom of page 207. Sam guffawed. Must be me with the brain damage. The door'll need fixin', said Lester. Yep, I reckon so. Listen, can I borrow that cleaver sometime? Course. What you cuttin'? Thinking about what them Jews do, bar misfart, whatever it is. Circumcision? Lester went yellow. You? No, not me, Cobber, my eldest. And I tell ya, me hand'll be none too steady. He'll be sitting down to piss. Lester wiped the blade on his apron. Don't have children, mate, whatever you do. No, Lester said, turning to leave. What? So we get a little taste of it there, where it's very Aussie, the slang, the drawl, how you going, mate, that type of deal. So you can really imagine that in your own mind. I'm gonna jump onto my final summary here. Similar books, recommendations. Look, it's a really striking read. I think it jumps out at you, not just the magic realism elements, but also the hardship, the adversity, the kinship. I think there's some deep themes to us. You could take more out from this book. There's things related to, social, economic positions, of poverty, of what it is to be Australian, of historical events, of being on the dole, of bludgers, of hard work, all these sorts of things. But these were the ones that really stood out for me. Multiple places where there's a real nice turn of phrase. There's these beautiful aspects of, there was a section where he was talking about there's an inability to compete with dead heroes, and I found that really striking as well as a good way of putting this. The only critique I had of this was there was a slightly too much abstraction in some parts. There were some parts where, like that hell description I read, it's a bit out there, it's a bit extra, in particular when it's related to Fisher's mind, and it's almost like trying to imagine what it's like to be someone with brain damage, and it's very loose and very, it's hard to comprehend what's actually going on. It doesn't fit a full narrative structure and make it super easy. There was elements of that I liked, and then there was parts where I was just like, I don't really get this. I'm not sure what's going on here. So that's probably my only critique of the book. But in general, the parallels to Cien Años de Soledad, to 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, a really fantastic book, very worth tuning into as well, is very, very, very similar. Just the house, the families, the magic realism. It's like the Australian version of that. So if you like that book, definitely worth checking out this one. Gold's Book of Fish as well has these elements into it, by Richard Flanagan. So another similar feel to it if you want another Aussie book which is like this. There's a reason this is near the top of many Aussie classic lists, because it is just a solid book. It's really striking. It's a very unique read. So overall, Cloudstreet by Tim Winton, I'm going to give a 7.5 and 10 to. Very worth checking out. And my final little recommendation is just read more from your own country. It was fantastic reading an Aussie book like this and being like, damn, we got some good authors. So just a reminder, gives you a deeper connection with where you're from and who you are and things like this. So I'm going to jump onto the Boostagram Lounge here and thank some people who've helped support the show over this last week and a half. It has been at that extra half a week since I've now doing the book reviews on a Thursday. So that'll be locked in for, I would say, like the next 6 months going forward until I maybe start traveling, and then we'll see what happens with these. So there's a couple of people who boosted into the show. I saw Ashley Glenday sending some small ones here and there, 40 sats, 100 sats, things like that. Every little bit is appreciated. No notes on those. I do appreciate messages, but if you just want to send in as well, I won't say no to that, and I'll thank you. And we do have a boostagram here from Sir TJ the Wrathful, who sent 1,953, and this was on the book Post Office by Charles Bukowski. And he says, I've been a mail carrier for 6 years, and as far as working at the post office, I can 100% relate to this character. It's a horrid, corrupt place. I struggle every day with my attitude working there. As far as the rest of the book, I only made it halfway through, lol. Anyways, thanks for the book reviews. It reminds me that I have books I want to read. My pleasure, Sir TJ, the Wrathful, from the Dorful into the Dorful verse, who's doing really cool things with value for value music. I'm sure I'll talk more about those when I read some books which are related more to technology and innovation, things like that. And yeah, I was actually having a discussion last night with my roommate just about what it's like to work in a 9 to 5 and the situations you can get in where you're being told to do things which are impossible. And so you have to do the impossible. And I very much get the feel that's what working in a post office could be like, where it's, you have to fill out this many forms in this many time, but you don't actually have the form, so it's impossible, that sort of thing. So I feel you, man. I feel you. There are certain jobs, there are certain situations you can get in, which is just like, what the hell? What this makes no sense. But I'm glad this has inspired you to read as well. This is kind of what the book reviews is about. Half of it's to get my own thoughts out, to be able to connect with people, produce something which I hope other people really enjoy reading, listening to and consuming. But also, like I'm talking about these books because I think they're usually worthy of reading. It's probably about 1 in every 7 or 8, which is I'm a little bit meh, but I'll try and get through it anyway. So that's the Boostagram Lounge. Thank you for everyone. I don't remember any real comments coming on the actual YouTube channel to call out in particular. So I think we'll just leave that there for this very moment. Let me just quickly jump over to here and see if there's been any over this last week. We did have this guy talking about the Soren Kierkegaard one, and actually kind of, a couple of like negative comments of some previous books, the Wim Hof Method and Either Or by Soren Kierkegaard, and just saying how I didn't understand them or that the book is full of shit. Hey, look, I appreciate it, all and every comment, so thank you for those people tuning into those. Although you don't need to insult me as well. It's just because I didn't understand the book. It's maybe you're just imagining crap that's not actually there as well. Just saying. So let's go into the value for value. This is a value for value podcast. I do all of this free of charge. My motto, my ethos in life is I want this to be available anywhere, any place, anytime for everyone in any how method. So there'll never be paywalls. There'll never be things blocking you from getting this. The only reason you would maybe not find it at a place is if they put advertising on top of it, which is also another ethos of mine. I don't believe in advertising. I don't want my views corrupted by people coming in saying like, oh, Karen, if I send you this book for free, will you read it? Which I have gotten before, or potentially in the future when the channel's bigger, authors coming in and wanting guest spots or things like that. No, I read the books which I find interesting and try and minimize my external influences to those which you can see, which is why I do it all out in the open with people like Sir TJ the Wrathful and Ashley Glenday, and thank them for their support. So there's many ways you can do that. Time, just simply sharing the book reviews with another person joining me on these live ones. So I really appreciate the interactions with people and doing it like that. That's super, super fun. If there's a one in the comments actually says slightly tangy sound. That's an interesting description. I'm not sure what's different from compared to the last week. Should be about the same. So we do. I do appreciate you coming joining in live, things like that. Talent, is there any books that you would recommend? Is there any things that you think I've missed out of these? I would really appreciate getting some feedback in terms of that, in terms of even the audio quality, in terms of things that I have said or not said, of how I could make this podcast better. All of those sorts of interactions that you could provide would be very much appreciated. Feedback is hugely, hugely critical. So would very much appreciate your talent in making this show better. And then finally, treasure. If you want to support in a monetary manner, this does require time, energy, costs in terms of hosting, in terms of keeping up cameras updated, crappy audio mixes failing eventually. all of these things require money. So if you want to support the show, if you get value from this show, I just ask that you return it. And the value is subjective. It's up to you. It could be a small amount. It could be a large amount. You can do that via the PayPal link, which you find in the show notes. And you can also do that by going to a new podcast app. I've got a whole bunch of reviews of them on meremortalspodcast.com/support. And you'll get extra benefits from tuning in by seeing chapter images as they're coming up, same as you'll see on the YouTube video, of transcripts of things like that. So it's a very fun experience, and I do recommend you try one of those out, and you'll be able to get some tasty goodness from that. Coming up in later episodes, I will have some ways for you to help support, and I will give you sats so that you can hopefully boost them back to me, because I would really love that. So tune into probably next week's episode to learn more about that. And yeah, other than that, we'll just leave it there for today. Thank you everyone for joining me into this live, for tuning into it afterwards, post-hand. Really do appreciate it. Book reviews, recommendations, please send them to me. And yeah, we'll come back with another book review in a week's time. Thanks for tuning in. Ciao for now. Kyron out. Bye.